All right, so it should be recording. And I want to officially welcome everyone here today. Thank you so much for joining us. It is 10:13. We enjoyed getting to know some of you here, and thank you for sharing your work. Welcome to the first free media training organized by the American Sociological Association Children and Youth Section. And on behalf of our president, Jessica Taft, and our Communications and Publications Committee, formed by Ashley Larson-Gibby, who is here, Joanna Dreby, who is also here, Tricia Dowen, and Sadaya Malcolm Wallace, and myself, I want to give you a warm welcome. If you're not a member, join, but don't worry, we will have other events. We've talked about the importance of continuing to build community, not only at the ASA meetings that are once a year, but maybe throughout. It's so important to learn from one another and have a community. So thank you for being here. Most importantly, I want to thank Dr. Castañeda and Emmy Hernandez for, and let me highlight this, volunteering their time. These are magnificent individuals that get paid for doing this type of work, and they are doing this for free. So I want to express my gratitude for sharing your expertise and helping us. How do we prepare and say yes to these types of media opportunities? And how do we share our work more broadly? Because we're doing, as we already heard, very, very important work. First, we will start with Dr. Castañeda, and he will present for about 40 minutes. Then we will take a 5-minute break so that you can refill your cafecito. Do you guys have your cafecito or tea? You better, otherwise, what are you doing? We will take about 5 minutes to refresh, and then we will resume the training with Emmy Hernandez, and I will introduce her properly at that time. We did give Dr. Castañeda a list of possible questions to consider, but I recognize that we don't know what we don't know. And that's exactly what I told him. So overall, what I would like him to cover is what are the important lessons and skills that you have learned over time and are still developing and learning to do the type of public-facing work that you're already doing. You mentioned that you're already learning, but from our perspective, you're doing an amazing job, and we really admire you for that work that you're conducting on for the public and not just for students and other academics. Dr. Ernesto Castañeda, those of you that know him, has an impressive academic record, and I could do no justice with this introduction, but I will just mention a couple things. He is the director of the Center for Latin America and Latino Studies and founding director of the Immigration Lab, and he's also the author, and Dr. Castañeda, is this correct? 10 books, including 2 that came out in 2024, Reunited and Immigrant Realities, that I encourage you to buy them, use them in your class, and also follow him on social media. If you can share your handles where you prefer for us to follow you, that would be great. So thank you so much for, again, the amazing work that you're doing, for saying yes to this invitation. And please help me welcome Dr. Castañeda, and we look forward to learning from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Estrada. Sorry, Natasha, you had your hand up as something emergency or no, just a type. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much for the invitation today. I'll share my handle now if Emir asks me. I create a little image because otherwise I would forget. Can you? Oh, it's not letting me. Give me 1 second. So, I mean, so you're not going to do the question by question, right? You just want me to go ahead and speak?
I do have the questions here, but if you prefer to just give us a rundown, what would you prefer?
No, yeah, okay. So then I'll just talk.
Yes.
But I'll call you Emir, if that's okay. You were right here, yeah. So Emir was very kind enough to send me the questions ahead of time, and that shows that he's a prepared journalist, a professor. He's very courteous. And it's helpful for a speaker, for somebody interviewed, particularly the first times around. Now I don't expect anymore that people will send the questions, but questions are very, very important, and there are a lot of information that a journalist is going to give to you. So let me read a couple of these. So Emir already read the first one. The second one was, how do you decide which projects or findings to promote most actively? And then she's asking about catchy titles. How do you craft research abstracts or titles to attract more attention? So all those questions is starting with the first one, which was how have you learned to promote your work? And so here, I think it's a great opportunity that whenever you're interviewed by anybody, and many of you are ethnographers, are researchers, you do interviews, you have something that you want to know, you have an agenda, because that's I don't know this, I want to find out, let me ask about it, okay? But then, and then your respondents have to answer what you're telling them. Something that is very important to know with media training is that you don't have to, like a respondent, right? You don't have to answer any question you don't want to. So also you can reframe the questions. And again, I learn a lot from the questions that I get asked to the media. Basically, the journalists keep me up to date on what's more important for the public to know, and how all the things that most of you know in this room today is not common knowledge for the public, but not even for experts that follow the immigration beat, for example. So some of the questions are key to know what you can write about in your next book. So questions are very important. But also there's a lot of assumptions in questions, right? And I don't make this process explicit when I'm talking to journalists, but as most of you here are sociologists or academics, I can do that, right? So in these questions, there's some assumptions, right? The first one, and again, this is coming from the discipline. It's not an attack on Emir or anything, but that's the way we've been trained as scholars. And first of all, is that it's our work, right? That the work belongs to an individual and it has your name, so therefore you are possessive of it. In the immigration lab, I take to collaborate with a lot of people. I try to grade pieces of PETs with students, and they have a hard time letting go, understanding what it means for them and me to call for something. It's something that in our classes, we grade most of the work individually, or we grade it in groups, but we know the dynamics of that, and not everybody takes it very seriously. So something that I will invite you to is that when you think about media engagement, don't think so much about promoting your work. Not because there's anything wrong with it. I love it. You have a new book, promote all that you can. But in terms of books, colleagues like you, it's a good place to say, hey, this new book is out, because you can consider it for your classes. You can assign it. You will probably read it. And I encourage you to all the books that you heard about today. It's so much work to write them. So buy them, buy Emir's books. It's excellent. It doesn't matter if a book is 5, 6, 7 years old. Buy as much books as you can, because most of academics, they only read something when we're going to cite it, right? So we're doing something about crime in the streets of LA, and we're going to read what has that in the title. So that's a problem that we have in academia, that sometimes we don't read. But if you read books outside of your expertise, then they can be handy when you're writing. All right, maybe I lost you already. So there's one thing how you promote your work when you go to ASA, when you work with newsletters to the ASA sections, and the ways that we have been trained to, that a lot of people that trained us, the older generations, they were very worried of the department of self-promotion. And they thought that that was rude, that was tacky, that it wasn't classy, that the work will rise to the best work will rise to the top. And yeah, if you got your PhD in the 50s, and if you were one of the few academics in the 70s, and you're in a top department, people will know your work because there's not much around, right? But nowadays, how many books are published in sociology every year? NYU by itself must publish around 100, and then you have all the presses. So none of us here can read everything that is being published, even by people in the sections that we belong to. So if people don't hear about the work from yourself, they're not gonna be aware of it, and they're less likely to read it. That's the way we think about it in academia, and that's a real problem, and that's an issue that we have. But for journalists, they don't care, and just subtly or not subtly, they don't care about your publications. They don't care about your new book as a new book. They want you to explain something that is a problem in the real world today, and how your expertise and all your years in grad school, your postdoc, your position as a professor, researcher, etc., how can it help them, the questions that they have? But most of the time, they won't read your book. The book is an excuse to get engaged in a conversation about something else that is going to touch on the book, but maybe just tangentially. So again, the first thing to disabuse yourself is, please don't do the mistake that most of our colleagues do, that they will only talk about their work or their expertise. So a very quick example. Yesterday, I was interviewed about the executive order that Trump signed regarding Washington, D.C. That was the ask. He was a journalist. I'm leaving the office at 7 p.m. trying to get home to have dinner. And he contacts me, hey, can I talk to you? I need somebody to give me a soundbite. Literally, he said that because now I know him. And the new story is going to air tonight. Have you seen the executive order? I'm like, no, I haven't seen it. Well, I'll send it to you. Like, okay, yeah, let's talk at 8:30. So I had dinner. I turned on the camera. We talked for 5 minutes. But what was there in the executive order? So now the federal agencies are going to take control of immigration enforcement in Washington, D.C. Had it been this for this journalist friend making me read those stupid words from Trump and company, I would have never read that executive order. And they had a section that said immigration enforcement, which actually it's very obvious that the purpose of that is to get rid of the sanctuary practices that the mayor of DC was trying to implement. So very relevant to the work that we do in the immigration sphere, to policy, and to the practice and the concerns of the immigrant community on DC that I work very closely. So again, I'm learning, the journalists are kind of feeding me documents and the latest things that even if I'm listening to the news all the time, I wouldn't have known without my interactions with them. So what I'm trying to say is that I talked to him for 5 minutes and I had something to say. I'm not an expert in DC. I don't know the budget. I have never met the mayor. Many things that I could have said, no, I'm not an expert on that. He knew it wasn't my main area of expertise, but I had enough for the 2 sound bites that made it into the news story. So I made him a favor and I learned something about the interaction, and what I said, I stand by. Trump started talking about DC as the swamp. Now he's trying to make it into the capital of now he sees a reflection of himself, and he wants it to be beautiful and safe and things. So that's a change in rhetoric. So I thought theologically, which is something that was, all of you are very critical, very smart. You have a very analytical brain. So that's what you bring into public discussions, your analysis of things. So you have to, when you're asked about a new story, you can think about it critically and using sociological theory, interpret it in a different way that the journalist would do, or that most people in the audience would think about it. So I think that's our goal, is to think sociologically, to think analytically, without using any terms that are not understandable by somebody with a high school education, or and without using any authors' names, no theories' names, because then we will alienate, even alienate probably is a bad word to use for this, the audience, right? So it's how you keep it simple. I will bet that most of you here are great teachers, and you are able to communicate the material to your students, college students or grad students, in a way that they can grasp. And if no, you know that you're doing something wrong, right? So it's the same thing. When you're talking to the media, you have to simplify things and make it into, again, soundbites is probably, it has a bad rep, it's maybe a bad name, but you have to distill ideas to its very basic, in a way that is understandable and memorable, and that you are not completely breaking the frame on the way that people are thinking about it, but that you move them a little bit closer to the reality. So can you cannot just say, okay, this is all wrong, the approach is wrong, you got it wrong, the real thing is here. They may not be able to follow you all the way there. But if you move them a little closer, or if you make them question the assumption that they have about schooling and the role of discipline schooling, the role of ICE and how ICE doesn't work in the border, if you just kind of have them, oh, okay, I didn't know that, and then you made them curious, you've done your work. Again, you're going to be speaking to the media for the most part for 3 minutes. Even in a podcast, you may speak longer, but even there with the ads and the question, all that is going to be 20, 30 minutes. So you cannot lecture, you cannot teach, you cannot have the final answer for the journalist. And if you start lecturing at them, they're not going to call you back. They'll be bored and be like, that professor is too professorial. I don't want to do anything with them because I'm not their student. You're doing a service, you're giving your time, but that's not what they want. They want something quick and easy and simple that is true, and that they can publish without any problem. So when you're talking to the media or non-scholars, don't try to avoid. There's always caveats. There's always exceptions. You were very aware not to generalize, not to simplify too much, because that's against our academic instinct. But again, when you're talking to a journalist, you have to go to the point that you think is important for the public to know. Because if you say, okay, Trump is doing this and this and this and this and this is wrong because he thinks this and this and this, but in reality, this is what's happening, immigration realities are this, they're going to record you like right now, and they can quote, somebody can make an edit of this video and just quote me on the first part without quoting what I really wanted to say, what I think is right. But because I spent enough time giving the other person's position, it's fair game for the journalist to quote me when I'm talking about a caveat that repeats what maybe the stereotype or the prejudice that the journalist has, because that's what's around in the public discourse. So spend all your time saying what you want to say. All right, let me go back to the questions. So do you actively pitch yourself to media outlets? That's a great question. Every once in a while I do. We are taught to think about op-eds as the best way that academics can engage in public debates. But to be honest, who now reads op-eds? Most local journals have a very small readership. If you're writing, and everybody, some of our professors think that it's only valid if it's an op-ed in the New York Times, in the Washington Post. It's really, really, really hard to get there. You have to, again, have a lot of similar biases as the editors there, which is not very useful. And it's just the time that it's going to take for them to get back to you. The Washington Post, you send an op-ed, and they say, well, it may take up to 5 days to evaluate. If you don't hear back from us in 5 days, it's a no, right? But if it's something like, I had something on Tren de Aragua that I wanted to come the same day that the people have been deported to El Salvador, had I sent it to, well, we sent it weeks before to the Washington Post, we never heard back. So you lose that kind of, because for news outlets, it has to be of the moment or it's too old. So I wouldn't recommend that you pitch to the New York Times and the Washington Post, because again, a lot of you were saying, I'm afraid of being a target. And yes, if you are in MSNBC, in CNN, in Fox News, the Washington Post, and the New York Times, that's the media that Trump criticizes, and that's the media that Trump consumes and cares about. So if you're there, you may get some flack from him or from his followers and everybody else. I speak to the media all the time, every week, but I almost never talk to those 5 guys. And the hate crime and the hate email and all that is very manageable. It's not too bad, because there's a lot of audience that speaks only Spanish, which they deserve somebody that is more balanced or more knowledgeable than some of the people they often they hear from. And again, in general, there's a lot of local newspapers. There's a lot of outlets that are more niche that you are perfect knowledge creators or content creators for those audiences. And I think that's where it's better when you use your time, because it's going to reach the people that you are more willing to change their mind, are more willing to engage with your ideas, to read your work, to buy your book, etc. But again, it's in the old days, having a lot of media engagement will increase book sales. The people that make this for a living, there are people, again, it is very overwhelming to pitch and to advertise a book. So Joanna was asking, and a couple others were asking. There are a couple of, so Leah Paulos has a company that does this. There's a number of companies that do this. You pay a few $1,000s and they take care of the media. If you have the money, or somehow your school can support you with some money for that, it's worth it, because otherwise it takes a lot of time. But even those professionals say that media exposure doesn't really translate anymore. It used to be 10 years and before. But media exposure of a book, even if it's a crossover, easy to read, it doesn't really increase. So your media appearance, that's when you're making the thing. So if your book is about, if the takeaway of your book is ABC, you're doing the interview to say ABC. So people don't have to read the book, because they were not going to read it any other way, anyway. So again, the goal is to communicate. So again, to answer the question, do I do my own pitches every once in a while? But it's very hard, very time consuming. I hate it. I try not to pitch because it takes a lot of time, and I hate doing email. I don't have time for email. My mailbox is a mess. So that's why it's very important that the media gets to know you, likes you well enough that they reach back to you, because then you don't have to do that booking. They'll be like, hey, Emmy, hey, Vanessa, I have a question. Can you jump in the phone in the next hour? And if you're doing the dishes, if you're doing lunch, if you're walking the dog, if you are grading, stop and say, yes, let's talk right now. I'll get back to my chores next time. So the only exception will be if you're teaching, but otherwise I'll say yes, because most of my media appearances, they get booked the day off, the same day. So like somebody wanted me to, they asked me an hour and a half ago if I will be on TV in 20 minutes. I'm like, no, I have a panel, I cannot do it. But they know that I'll get back to their message right away, and they have an answer of yes or no, so they can go to the next person down the list. But because I say yes at least 50% of the time, they come back to me. So that saves them time, and it saves me time for trying to reach out and say, hey, I have this study that I wrote. I have this book that I wrote. I want to talk about it. It's very hard to get in there. But once they ask you, hey, there was a raid in your town. Hey, they found this Mara Salvatrucha guy in the neighborhood where you live. Would you mind talking to me? Say yes, even if you haven't read the whole thing. Another secret, I normally prepare for a TV interview or a interview with a journalist that's going to call me and put me like that in the National Desk or Newsweek or something like that. If I'm lucky, I prepare and I do research for 15 minutes beforehand because I'm busy with all the stuff that I'm doing. So I don't have time to go deep in. And for all of you be nervous, because I'm not confident. Most of you are women here. So think like a white man. If they can have the confidence to go ahead and do it, you can do it, and you're going to do it better, even if you don't have the time to read every angle about it, every aspect, double check and done the research. You probably you know more than the average about that topic. So be confident. We need more Latinas, more women, more researchers to get up there and tell us why childcare matters, right? The work of Jessica Calarco is very important, because those gender household division of labor dynamics are often not considered as part of public policy, as part of economic discussions, but they are key. So again, you're going to bring an angle that is probably missing. So say yes, even if they ask you to talk to them the day off. Sometimes people will send you an email, hey, I want to talk about this topic. I saw that you have a book on this. I cannot assume I read it, but I know that there's now legal in Florida for 14-year-olds to work. We're still, street vendors count into that. Is that the case? Let me ask Dr. Estrada if she has something to say about that. And she may answer, no, I thank you, Ernesto, but no, I only work in California. I don't know anything about Florida. I haven't visited Florida in 10 years. I don't know about the law in Florida. No. You have something to say. You say, well, I know that it's mainly 80%, 48% of women street vending. People are street vending, 48% of them in New York are women, and they often used to work with their kids. So they are minors, so they're already working, but they are working under the table. They don't pay taxes. They are not counted as workers by in this case, Florida. So no, this wouldn't count. It will be more new people being drawn to work in factories or construction, because there's a lot of the immigrants have left, a lot of the community people have left Florida because of the politics of DeSantis. You probably know that. You can say that it's a true statement. And then you can talk about the role of minors. And again, I don't know, I don't live in Florida, but my guess, if 14-year-olds are allowed to work after hours, to work more time and all that, who are the 14-year-olds that are going to more likely to do it? The people that are going to go to our private college institutions, or the children of immigrants, African Americans, Haitians that are going to drop out of high school, not because they are bad students, but if you force them to go in the labor market to make easy money today, it's probably going to have a long impact in their earning potential, because they won't finish high school, they won't finish college, they will go to grad school and all that. You all know that. You can all hypothesize that. And again, don't use the word hypothesis, but you could answer that media call, even if you didn't know anything about this topic until that. Most of the journalists, when they invite you to do something, they'll send you a link to the latest story. And they basically just want to grab the AP, CBS, NBC, just did a story about a topic. They're consuming media, and then they want to do their flavor of that. So they cannot just copy paste, but they want to just like kind of get a new quote from you. They're going to rephrase it, and that's their story for the day. So you just need to help them do that work. So again, don't be shy. So it's not going to be about your book. It's not going to be never about your journal article. They're not going to read it. They're not going to understand it. But they know that you do gender and X. So then if they have something related, they may ask you a question. Again, I guarantee you that 90% of the time, you'll be able to tell them something smart, useful, intelligent, that may help them think better about the topic. And again, you just have to provide, for the most time, 1 or 2 minutes of good content. So again, all of you can do it. But again, it's not about your work. It's not about your latest publication. It's about your view as a sociologist or a social scientist, your understanding of reality that is going to help that journalist go deeper than they were thinking of, or make that story better than the one they sent you over WhatsApp 5 minutes before. So let me stop here for more questions, clarifications. Because again, I already spoke already too much. Emir, something else that you want me to touch on that I haven't touched?
Yes, let's see. The fifth question, and if others have questions based on what you've said, please, I encourage you to unmute and ask your question. What role does social media play in promoting your work? What are the best practices here? Are some platforms better than others? And yeah, if you can expand on that.
Yes, Emir, thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. Social media is a great way to practice your voice, and it's something that what you publish on X, what you publish on Blue Sky, which I really recommend. X has become toxic and undoable and problematic for many reasons. It's a place where still a lot of journalists are, a lot of politicians are. This is still some type of record. So everything that you put there is fair play. If your profile is public, which I recommend, is fair game for somebody to use that and publish it. Use it in an article. Same thing with Blue Sky. So I recommend all of you that you open a Blue Sky account. It's free. Right now, it tends to be center liberal leaning, but it's not an echo chamber because you are listening to, well, yes, an echo chamber as any social media, you follow the people that you think are interesting and they follow you back. It's hard to get a following at the beginning. It takes a long time. So that's why the sooner the better, so you can develop a network. That's work. But again, if you right now just see it as a good way to get high quality analysis on the media without the trolling and the verbal harassment and abuse that happens on X, I really recommend Blue Sky. Worst case scenario, you don't use it and you leave it there, but you have your account to come and use. I opened my X account, I don't know, in 2004, something. I didn't use it for like 6 years, but then I came back to it and I was loving it. I was becoming really good at it when X collapsed. But now this is kind of taking over on Blue Sky. My personal suggestion, so a lot of people use it to repost things from other people. That's valid. Sometimes they're posting something that's getting a lot of play, but just adding your 2 or 3 sentences that can, again, summarize it or give it, again, as a sociologist, you're going to have great 2 sentences that can kind of bring more value and more dimension to that discussion. That tends to do very well in Blue Sky, and then you can get new followers that way. So I would recommend you do that. Also, a lot of it is just kind of keeping, you know, how you have to keep your CV up to date and your report for the annual evaluation. I use social media in a way for that. Like if I do a talk or if I talk to the media, I put it there so I remember that it happened, because otherwise when I have to tell my dean how many interviews I did, I wouldn't know unless I can go to places. So it's like a time machine for me to remember what I said. And in a way, I use it particularly to be on the record. Okay, I think if Trump deports massively, and he deports 4 million people as he wants, by the end of the year, we're going to have a recession. And I want that to be in the record so I can come back a year and be like, we knew that, we told you so, not to tell you so, but immigrants contribute to the economy. It's a fact. If you deport them, it's going to cost us. And then you get tariffs. So it's good to put, for TV interviews, I don't put the whole video most of the time because you have to do a little work, but you can put a couple of the takeaways or the things that you wanted to say, but you didn't have time to say, or you were not asked about, but you want to say. Social media is a great place to do that. So, and again, I'll just add your ideas. If you work in a public university, you can put a disclaimer, right? I talk at a personal title. So you should be okay. Nobody has really lost their job. Never call for violence on social media, any type, even a private profile, that's obvious. And I try to stay away from hominem attacks. Don't attack anybody personally. And a lot of people use social media to kind of talk about their taste, their opinions, their quirky comments, what I had for breakfast. I find that unnecessary. I don't like doing that. I'm very public, but I don't think anybody cares what I had for lunch or what I think about the dog walker or something that is very personal to me. I keep that private. I mean, there's no need for that. A lot of people in social media do that, and it attracts some attention from some people. Some people may feel like they know you. It may create some followers. That was kind of common on X before. It's common on Instagram. But I think because we're professionals and we have a public sphere, it's something that you will feel comfortable saying in the classroom. I take social media the same way. Something that is public that anybody could go and say, hey, Castañeda said that that tariffs are bad, or Castañeda said that these policies are racist, and I can be like, yeah, they're racist because X, Y, and Z. So again, assume that everything is on the record, but it doesn't mean that you have to be afraid, because if I was the only one speaking about against rates in the US, then I'll be a target. But all your work, a lot of your work does that. And if there's thousands of us speaking to the media saying why immigrants are not criminals, immigrants contribute to the economy, most people sent to El Salvador were not members of Tren de Aragua. If a lot of us say that, then there's protection in numbers, and they cannot silence everybody. So that's why it's important that it's a lot of people doing the media engagement and not just the same people all the time. It becomes easy for journalists and for somebody like me to just keep talking because we have the channels and we're used to it. But there's the need. I'd be happy if I did less interviews and you took some of them. It works for everybody. But again, if you had to kind of put a foot in, open the door, practice, and be fine if the first interviews you do, you are not completely comfortable. You do a lot of fillers like I do, or things like that. It's fine. You are not going to be a concrete. That's not the measure. It's just it's going to be better than the random interviews that some journalists used to do in the street. That you get people that say whatever idea, but at least you get a sense of public opinion. More and more in immigration stories, for example, it's very rare today that they go and talk to actual immigrants in the street. Super easy to do. We do it all the time, I hope. But for journalists, they have become very apprehensive of doing that. They have finally learned not to quote the Center for Immigration Studies or other race anti-immigrant kind of very openly eugenic organizations. So because of that, most of the journalists in the Washington Post, New York Times, and other venues have also become worried of citing advocates that speak for human rights and immigrant rights and all that. They think that's too political. So the only few left places are experts like us that the journalists can say that we're neutral. And we're going to talk about the facts. So I always talk about the facts, but I also say, according to a human rights perspective, or according to international law, or according to what's good for the US economically, morally, I also have a very strong moral stance or moral compass. I don't try to be like, but middle of the road or this angle, two-side this and that's dangerous. You can say a strong opinion and say the border is safe. There's less crime in the border because that's what the data says. And that's the reality. So you don't have to kind of try to pretend to, because most of the pundits out there that do migration, especially in the New York Times, they are so careful that they end up validating the policies like the one of the Trump administration or the tough policies of the Biden administration. So, and we sometimes are complicit with that when in our studies, in our grant proposals, never say things like, oh, there's record number of immigration, record number of asylum seekers, a record, or it's the highest border encounters that we ever seen, or there's more unaccompanied minors than ever. We don't know what happened in the 1800s. We don't have numbers for that. So always talk about percentages. Always, and again, in academia, we get a lot of like, nobody else has done this. I'm the only one that has looked at that. But when you're talking to the media, feel free to borrow from everything that you know that other people are doing. It's very hard to say, oh, Vanessa Delgado finds that this. Do that in a paper, do that in a blog, do that in social media. But when you're talking to a journalist, just like, what's the defining? Street vendors pay taxes. Okay, boom, that's a great sentence to say. Or if they were allowed to blah, blah, they would pay taxes. That's a great thing. Because again, what the public needs is the knowledge that we're producing that gets stuck in academia. And then we're thinking we're talking to each other, but we're not even talking to each other. Everybody should have read all of Joanna's Drevi's books, but I'm probably the only one here has done that because you are busy with your life, right? So if we cannot keep up with the literature, how can we expect the journalists or the public to do it? So our job, the public-facing job, is to kind of get the kernels of our work and try to get out there to be practical. All right, I'm going to read the other question. And in the meantime, Natasha, if you want to ask a question, or what do you think, Dr. Estrada?
Brittany can unmute. She said she can ask her question, and then we'll go to, was it Natasha who had another question? And after those two questions, we'll take a little 5-minute break, and we'll go to Emmy, and then we'll have questions for Q&A for both speakers. Go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. I appreciate everything you said, and I really wish I had had this training back during the election. Just some background on my question. I was contacted by the Harris Walls campaign in November, starting in September last year, because of my work with Latino Mormon immigrants and doing work on politics with Mormons in Arizona, and it was a swing state. I was contacted and ended up doing like, I think 15 interviews with like international and domestic journalists. It was wild. It was a wild time. But something I wanted to ask you with your much more extensive experience was, something that was hard for me was I would have these long conversations with people. And I especially was stressing during that time because people were like, do you think Kamala has a chance? Do you think Kamala has a chance? And I was like, well, Mormonism's history of like racial segregation and white supremacy and like nationalism, really excludes XYZ groups. And they never included that in their analysis, right? Which I'm understanding now from you why. But I guess I was just wondering if you had any advice or feelings about discerning which news outlets or reporters to work with, because I didn't really have any training on how to do that. I just kind of like Googled the people who were contacting me and like read their work and kind of what take they had on like maybe the political spectrum, because I was worried talking about immigration and Mormonism and insular and very misunderstood religion, like the take they would have. But I guess I was just wondering, obviously you don't need to name names, but have you had any experiences where like you felt like your words or recommendations to the people interviewing you like was not translated or used in the way that you had wished it had been? Maybe it didn't align with your values or your takes as a researcher. And I guess I'm just wondering, how do you handle a situation like that? I'm fortunate nothing super bad happened with me, but I kind of look back and wish like, dang, like, I wish they hadn't said it this way. Or is the answer just like, have a talk with them if they ask you to work with them again, or don't work with them again? I know that's like a very long question, but
no, it's a great question. And I hear you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're asking it. And my answer would be, it's going to happen. Don't worry about it. So again, nobody's going to value you as a person because of 2 posts you give to a random journalist somewhere. That's everybody knows that it's part of a conversation, and it is so easy to be out of context. So, and again, don't worry about people to your left saying, oh, you were not self-righteous enough. That's not it's not an activism box. You're informing, you're giving data points. They're going to take some, they're going to not take others. That's all you can do. You have the person that wrote the story has the responsibility, but your quote is either more true or less true, more clear or less clear, but it's going to be something from material that you provided. So something that you said, oh, I have long conversations. That was a mistake I did when I was getting started, having an hour conversation. And then this I don't know how to manage this because this is not this is a weird time now for me, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So I talk about the people being deported to El Salvador, to a news outlet on March 15. I was immediately contacted by the family members of one of the Venezuelans being contacted, and they say he has a tattoo, but he's innocent, blah, blah, blah. Very important work. I follow up, I became a journalist and ask all these kind of follow-up questions of the family to understand that story. And since then, so before this talk, I had an interview with a woman from Mother Jones that has done similar work and published fantastic work, and a guy from North Carolina when this family is at, then that's going to help them get a lawyer and all that. But it was a story that I care a lot about. I want to get it right and all that. But my conversations were shorter than 20 minutes. And again, this is a big story for me because I'm invested personally, which I often don't, because it's more structural, more general. So I'm saying when a journalist, it's better for you and for them that you keep it to 5, 10, 30 minutes if it's something super complex, but don't talk more. If you took an hour, they're going to really have a lot of options to pick from. So that'll be and only give them the things you want them to quote, not the caveats, because it's very easy for you to get the 2 sides of the story and then they pick you. So they done that to me, that they use me to say the Republican points and they put it in my mouth. Or some people say that, according to Castañeda, some people say that, and then it's true, but that's not the most interesting. So that's something that takes a lot of time to get used to. That's why you can use social media to kind of practice that. But the important thing is that you had the experience, you had the exposure. I will keep those relationships because you will get better at it, at explaining what you want to say and maybe saying it in many different ways until they pick up on it. And if they don't worry, you keep doing. So I don't recommend that you contact somebody else and say, hey, you misunderstood me, you put out my context and all that, because most likely they didn't do it willingly to attack you. Journalists have a story to tell most of the time, and they're just using you to feel that you're aligned in a play that they have already written in their head. That's another thing. When you're the most successful, and I love this when this happens, then they come up with you with a very kind of stereotypical framework on how to talk about immigration and crime. They talk to you for half an hour, and then they basically end up writing the whole story the way you tell them, and they took their words to be their words, and they write them without giving you accreditation, and then you cite you a couple of times at the end. But basically, you're thinking, oh, that was my story. I gave them all the things that they did. They did a piece on sanctuary cities in Chicago for BBC in Spanish, and it was basically my interview transcribed, but the guy said that it was him, and he quoted me a couple of times. That's perfect. That's good, because I actually convinced him that was the right framework to take in. And he's a journalist, so he can take all the credit he wants for everything you give him. It's a gift. So again, I think it's good when we come with a good faith that the journalist is trying to do their job and we're trying to help them, and they're not trying to trick us. Again, if it's Fox News or a further right venue, then you have to be careful and maybe say no. But everything else is going to be more center right, the mainstream media. It's a process. So rather than say, hey, I felt bad, it's like, hey, happy to talk again. And then next time you do it better. Does that help? All right, thank you.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's going to happen, but you just get over it. And most of the time, I'm going to get to, I've done hundreds of interviews, and 90% of the time, I'm happy with what they say. Sometimes it's about stupid topics and all that, but it doesn't matter. It's a practice. It's becoming like you read emails every day. You go for a walk, or you teach twice a week. So try to make it so that in a couple of years from now, you talk to the media once every week about whatever they want to talk about. And then and that's it. It's a practice. You cannot just be a public sociologist for 5 minutes and then turn it off, or only talk when there was something hot in the media. Now, this topic, what happened after the elections with Mormons and immigration? I don't know. Write a story and try to get out there. If nobody publish it, we'll publish it in the blog of the Immigration Lab, so that you keep the conversation open and going on. And people are, oh yeah, what happened with the Mormons? So again, you had that success. Try to kind of keep it steady and going.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take Natasha's question. And Vanessa, if it's okay, if you can type your question, and then we'll circle back for the second segment. We're just getting this conversation started, which we had all day. But Natasha, would you mind unmuting?
Do we have time? I can also, I don't need to.
No, we have time.
Oh, yeah, okay. So thank you so much for this. This has been really interesting, seeing how the press approaches this. So you mentioned that it's not always worth the effort to pitch yourself to the press. So what are some other ways to get their attention? I mean, I imagine social media is one way, but what are some other ways to get their attention?
Yeah, that's a catch-22, because you don't want to spend too much time pitching, but they want you want them to call you. That's what I'm saying. In the case of Brittany, when she somehow became visible and people approach her, to kind of invest on those contacts and those relationships and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, I have this idea, or this happened, you want to write a story? And then it's easier than a cold pitch when they don't know you, they never work with you. So it's something that many journalists rely on is list of people that are willing to talk to the media. I think ASA has one, the National Science Foundation has one, the Social Scholar Strategy Network has another one. There's places where you can say, I'm an expert on X, you can contact me. Sometimes you get people that contact you that way. People are gonna do Google searches. So again, make sure that your topic and you come up on top of whatever your expertise is. Have your university websites up to date. And again, think of a journalist. So don't think about your provost and don't think about your chair. They know you, they're going to look at your CV, they're going to evaluate you another way. Your website profile should be for a journalist. How can they understand what you're saying without using any fancy terms? So your website is very important. And then, funny enough, people are going to cite or look for people that have spoken to the media before. That's what is very hard to break in. But once you break in, it's useful to know that you should be willing to be open because it will keep making requests. And if you close the faucet and say no, it may be years or it'll be very hard for you to again be able to reach the media. So again, it's a commitment. Don't see it as a one-time talking to the press. Don't see it as an op-ed. In order to really do public work or public sociology and keeping your work that you're producing new all the time. Now what I do is before having a publication or a book or anything, I have a blog or I talk about my research findings to the media first, because as you know, the books takes you years to it takes me years to finish. So being smart. So locally, wherever you are located, talk to your local journalist, look at their website or the student newspaper and talk about your work so that you are searchable as a news story online and other journalists are gonna find you that way. And social media too. Yeah. And then real quick, relationships with journalists is just happenstance. People from your neck of the woods, from your country of origin, from your graduates from your university. It's like everything, a personal relationship. But again, once you have a successful relationship with a journalist that they have published a couple of your pieces, then other journalists know that you know how to work with journalists and they don't have to convince you and beg you to please talk to them for 5 minutes. So then it just builds up. And then obviously you can always say no to any request, but you have to say yes to some so that you are under consideration. Thank you so much for your attention. Hopefully I didn't confuse you more than you were before. But I think Emmy is gonna do a better job like explaining this in an orderly fashion.
No, thank you. You did a great job. We learned so much, and the conversation is not over. We are just going to take a little break. I know you're very busy. Hopefully, you can stick around so that we can have some final questions. I encourage everyone here to take a little break, but also if you have some burning questions that you're like, I just have to ask them, use the chat and we'll get to them. And we'll have a chance again to have an open conversation after Emmy Hernandez. So thank you again. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 11:05 and excited to hear the next panelist and then hear from all of you. Gracias. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hola, hola. Welcome back. I hope you have a fresh cup of coffee or tea or water. And we are I'm very excited to introduce the next speaker, Emmy Hernandez. Emmy Hernandez is an executive level coach and international speaker with a communications background from UC Berkeley. She's a California girl, and she also has valuable training and certification in NLP, and I wrote this here, neuro-linguistic programming and super conscious recodes. And she can tell us more about that if you're interested in learning more about that. Emmy has been featured in Forbes, Thrive Global, and is a #1 best-selling author. She has leveraged her unique journey from the corporate tech world and now coaches and empowers individuals in sharing their own stories and amplifying their voices on influential platforms, which you will discuss a bit as one of the questions that came up in amongst the committee. She also has a very successful podcast, and most importantly, she is my neighbor, and I get to have cafecito with her, and we get to co-work and co-write. And actually, she has been one of the main sources of inspiration for gathering us here. So I want to give you, Emmy, so much credit because this is an area of my academic and professional life that I've struggled with and being like too tímida or chiviada. And you have given me a lot of tools and resources to get a little bit break from that shell. And so in having a coffee date with Emmy Hernandez, this idea came about. So I want to thank you and recognize you, and always so grateful for your kind words and encouragement. So I think you get to feel Emmy's personality and leadership. So thank you so much for being here and volunteering your time. And this second section, we will do more of a Q&A. I also want to encourage all of you here that if you have any burning questions to ask or unmute yourself. And again, we'll have some more question time towards the end to ask those questions. So Emmy, welcome. And if you want to introduce yourself, or if you want me to start with the first question, what would you like?
Hello, Emir, Dr. Estrada. I'm so proud of the doctor, so I'm always going to throw that in there. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am absolutely honored to be in this room. I have to tell you, I am not an academic. I am not a researcher. I am not smart enough or disciplined enough to get my PhD. So my hat's off to you, because the work that you are doing in this world is absolutely critical now more than ever. And I'm here to shine a light on the work that you're doing, maybe a little bit differently than you're used to, but I'm going to be bringing sort of the corporate background that I have, the entrepreneurial background that I have, and the theater background that I have. I'm a theater girl. It's one of the things that I wanted to pursue when I was younger, and I never did, but it turns out that I get to do theater on stage and get paid for it all over the world. So I guess I kind of do that. And please get us started with the first question.
Great. So one of the questions that was already addressed at some point is, how can we seek opportunities to share our academic work? Sometimes we feel that we write articles, publish books, and hope that somebody reads them or reads our work. But how can we take a more proactive approach in sharing the important work that we're doing?
Yes, I love that. And you know what, Emir, as an executive coach, the #1 thing I tell my clients is hope is not a strategy. Hope is an essential part of human connection, but it is not a productive strategy for anything that you want to actually get out in the workforce or out in the world. So I'm going to give you, and remember, so today, what we're going to cover today, I usually do in a full 8-hour or 9-hour session with my clients, or a full VIP weekend. So please know that I'm going to do rapid fire and do my best to just going to give you an overall umbrella, some of these topics. And I have given Emir full permission to interrupt me at any point in time and ask me to clarify, because there's some things that are probably common sense to me. Like some things are common sense to you that are not to me. So is it okay if we're each other's translators today? Can I have that from everyone? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Because I'm going to help you translate some of your stuff and vice versa. All right. So we're going to be doing some code switching and some media training and some of these other things. So to some of the opportunities that I think that you can all be seeking out to share your academic work in a little bit of different context is what Dr. Castañeda was already talking about. So I'm not going to go too detailed into the TV stuff. The one thing I will tell you on that, we're going to chat about it at the end about ChatGPT, is the hardest part about doing the pitching yourself is crafting the emails and the messaging and who to contact. Guess what? You can automate most of that with ChatGPT. I'm going to show you how to do that so you can take down those 10, 15 hours you would do in a month to a few minutes a week, and it changes the game forever, okay? Emir, you also mentioned that a lot of universities, including ASU, they have a program called Horizonte. That's on campus. That's kind of like PBS, right? So look for opportunities on your own campuses are there media training centers where they would want to be recording you and some potential opportunities there, okay? That's an area that I am not an expert in, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up, especially on your own personal campuses, okay? And again, the TV stuff, Dr. Castañeda covered it beautifully, so I'm not gonna go into that. I'm gonna be covering some of the other stuff. So by a show of hands or by a show of some chat love, give me a 1 if you would ever be interested in doing a TED Talk or a TEDx talk. Yay, I love it. Awesome. All right. So good news. One of my absolute best friends in the world, this is one of her areas of expertise. And she personally has 2 TEDx talks. And I'm one of her clients. So we're working on building out which TEDx talk and which stage I want to be on. And she has already had 10 clients who have had either 1 or 2 talks. So this is one of the things that I'm becoming an expert in as well. And I want you to know that the work that you're doing is ready for stage. Okay, the stage is set. It's just about how you present it, and the way that things are presented for TED Talks are very different than other keynotes as well. Okay, so I want you to know that the work that you're doing also needs to be on stage. So this is one opportunity. There's a structure to how to pitch. There's a structure to how to present. So these are some opportunities, but as also you have to know that this isn't something you can just wing. The TEDx training is that in and of itself, is its own 6-week course. But I just wanted you to know and start thinking about that because we all know Brene Brown, right? She's one of the famous researchers. She's not the only one, but I don't know if you know this. A lot of people don't know this story because it's kind of hidden in one of her other books. But the books that she wrote where she had, I think she said hundreds of copies sitting in her garage before she went on the TEDx stage. Like she didn't sell any of them, or maybe she sold like 5 copies, one to her mom and her grandma. Why? Because people didn't know who she was. So I want you to think about that next time. And it had nothing to do with the work not being important. The work was critical. But if people don't know who you are, how are they going to hear about your work? Okay. Another way is podcast guesting. Okay. So you can look, just like you can pitch to media outlets, you can pitch yourself to podcasts. So what are some podcasts around that you can find? And I can give you a list of like how to find them that you actually already listen to. And could you potentially bring an angle that someone would want to listen to? So all the ones I've just shared with you are the ones where you can't really control the narrative. So someone mentioned earlier about like, how do you make sure you're not misquoted or misrepresented? Because friends, same. Okay, that's one of the things that I absolutely hated, or I hate being misquoted or taken out of context, and people taking my stuff and running with it and misunderstanding. So what's important here is, how do you control the narrative? How do you control the narrative? So I'm going to give you a few tools of how you can control the narrative. One of them is launching your own podcast. Your podcast with the video. Like I literally record everything from this mic, this camera, on Zoom. We do start to finish, no editing. It's a raw file. It goes on Spotify, it goes on YouTube, and ChatGPT takes care of all the description and all the captions. Done. Okay? I'm making it sound super easy. It can be that easy. You just need a few steps along the way. And the reason I started my own podcast was because I was spending last year, I had a whole agency. I had an assistant that kept sending out pitch presentations to other podcasters. And guess what? 1 out of like 100 would respond with, yes, come on our show. But guess what happened once I had my own show? All of a sudden, people are like, can I be on your show? Can I be on your show? These are experts that have way more followers than I do. And all of a sudden they're like, can you be on our show? Can you be on our show? So it flips the dynamics a little bit. So that's how you can control the narrative. And you can also be keynotes at conferences, okay? You can keynote at conferences and get paid to do it, but there, again, you have to be relatable. So we're going to be going into understanding how it is to create relatable content. And believe it or not, you can get paid for your opinion. You can be writing for general publications. Who is familiar with the publication or the company Me Too or We Are Me Too? Okay, awesome. I reached out to them a few months before the election, and I wanted to just discuss how could I bring some of my context to what they're bringing to their audience. And it turns out that I had a lot of important, cool things to say that they wanted to hear. And to Dr. Castañeda's point, sometimes you have to be on a quick turnaround. So they asked me, they paid me for art. They said, okay, we want you, we're gonna pay you for your articles, and we'll get started next month. Guess what? I had an email from them. Was it, I think 5 hours later when Trump got elected. And they said, actually, we need an article from you ASAP. Can you give us one? Because if you can't, we're going to have to move to someone else. And they wanted an article around what to do when your partner votes differently. And they needed a 24-hour turnaround. And I said yes, even though I didn't know what I was going to write about. I was like, how do I go about this? And again, Q, and I'm going to be pitching ChatGPT to you a lot because it has been a lifesaver. ChatGPT has made me at least $30,000 in the last 3 months just from learning some of the tools that I'm going to teach you today. Okay, so those are some of the, and these are just a few of the opportunities I can think of to bring to your perspective, but we can talk in detail about every single one of them.
So you've already given us a lot of helpful tools. Thank you for that. The next question, and you've already touched on, is how do we make our work more relatable? We love making up words and complicating narratives. I think that's just part of our training, unfortunately. How do we make it more relatable so that it's engaging and people can actually understand what we're saying?
Yes. So this is a training in and of itself, right? But I'm gonna do my best to break this down. And I'm gonna say it depends on the audience, just like Dr. Castañeda said. Like, who are you talking to? If you're in a room full of journalists, if you're in a room full of your peers, please don't, I'm gonna say it in layman's terms, dumb it down, right? Use the language in the room. If you're in a room full of, think of you giving a presentation to high school students back at your alma mater. When you graduated from that high school, right? Or say now you're going back 20 years later, you're being honored, right? And they asked you to give a presentation, they asked you to give a keynote. Do you think those 15, 16, 17-year-olds are interested in the specific words that you use in your book? No, are they interested in you and your story? Heck yeah, they are, okay? They are interested because you are an inspiration to us all. We are all inspirations. We're amazing, right? So like what I didn't cover is, I'm so honored that Emir asked me to do this because this is near and dear to my heart. I am a child of immigrants myself, and I do a lot of work in the community. I did a lot of this work when I was younger. It's just not in my nature to do deep research on things. I let amazing experts like yourselves do that for us. And then it's my job to synthesize. That's how my brain works. My brain is like, I take super complex things, I've always done this, and bring it down so it's digestible, I call it. Like, how is this digestible? That's why I became a learning and development expert. And that's why I study neuroscience. And quantum physics. So everything is about like, how do you take super complex things and make it fun? Like I explain quantum physics in super simple terms. It's like a Wi-Fi, right? Your laptop's connected to Wi-Fi right now. We can't see the waves. Can you see the Wi-Fi? We know it's connected, but it's invisible, just like Bluetooth pairing, right? Are you connected or are you not? That's it, right? We're just, and the coaching that I do, it's about upgrading your software, right? So how do you upgrade your software? I don't need to go into the technicalities of how your phone actually works in order for you to understand upgrade software, because most of the time we just click a button. You're like, oh, okay. So it is about how do you learn how to make proper analogies and metaphors, and ChatGPT and some other tools that I'm going to show you actually do that for you as well. So here's one of the things that I really want to share with you all is this isn't about creating extra work for yourself, but it is a little bit of a different lens. So I want you to know the idea is to capture and document and repurpose what you are already doing. Okay? This isn't about doing extra work all the time, although you are going to make some extra videos. But here's the thing. As we're talking here, I'm actually capturing this on a separate device from a completely different angle that doesn't make it so formal because this is a Zoom meeting. But on a separate device, it keeps the privacy because it doesn't show any of your faces. It's showing me and what I'm talking about. And I can take a short clip from that. Maybe it's 10 seconds, maybe it's 20 seconds. And just to demonstrate some of my expertise. So you're already doing a lot of that. And most of the time you don't realize that you are because you're just like, this is normal life. Yes, but a lot of other people are super interested in your normal life because they don't have that going on. So one of the things that a lot of your peers are actually going to be studying here and they're starting to do right now, I know this because I've done some research on it, is the TikTokification of information, okay? So the introduction of TikTok has changed the paradigm of how we consume social media. Okay, we've had Facebook for a while, we've had Instagram, and it was a pretty images, and then oh yeah, Reels, and it was like, meh, okay, people were just kind of doing, and we knew that video was important, but TikTok changed the game, and now they have set the standard for how we consume. So YouTube Shorts is trying to compete with TikTok. Instagram Reels is trying to compete with TikTok. Why does this matter? You're like, who cares? I mean, I don't care about social media. It matters because TikTok has nailed the art of relatability, okay? TikTok has become the master, and those who have mastered the art of creating videos on TikTok have mastered the art of edutainment. Edutainment, okay? How do you educate and entertain at the same time? And you might be thinking, Emmy, but I'm not a clown. I don't work at the circus. Isn't everything a circus right now? I mean, the media is a circus. This administration is a circus. So we're kind of all in a big circus right now. So might as well participate and be a part of the narrative instead of somebody speaking on your behalf, just like Dr. Castañeda said. Like, you have so much to share and say, but it's just in these big blobs, right? So you have your whole book. And I hate to break it to you. This might hurt your feelings. I'm not intending it to, but your book can be synthesized in 3 sentences and ChatGPT can do it for you. And it has to be fun and quirky and with a hook, right? What is something that is jaw-dropping? And I'm going to show you a little bit more about what that means. So what I want you to know is that there are different models. The intention here is not, oh, just go be a general influencer. Okay, so there's general influencers who don't really have any main topics they talk about with Dr. Castañeda, so like what they had for breakfast, while they're doing their makeup. And it's like, okay, yeah, right. And they make a lot of money monetizing that. Good for them, right? That's one model. You're in a different model. And you're in a very similar model that I am, that we are a brand model. And I know you probably don't see yourself as a brand. I talked with Emir earlier, I think it was last week when we were on our coffee date. She's like, I mean, we just can't really wrap ourselves around this whole brand ideal. And I said, okay, well, give me some context as to what would make sense for you. And she said, we understand public sociology. Okay, cool. You're a public sociologist. I remember I told you I was going to translate for you. I need you to understand that in outside of your field, so 99% of other places outside of where you're at, that means expert figure, expert authority. And I don't mean authority as in like cult figure. I mean as in your space. And that means, and I want you to know you want to be an expert in your field, because if you're not an expert, then they won't call you for TV segments or call you to be on the podcast. So yes, you are an expert in certain fields, and you don't have to pretend to be an expert in everything, but you can be an expert in certain snippets of the work that you're doing. And you can always turn down a question where you don't feel comfortable going on record with something and say, you know what, that's a great question. I'm going to have to circle back with you and make sure I check in with my counsel or my team. Right? It's the energy and enthusiasm that you share it with, and they get to decide whether they want to keep that in the clip or not. But know that you don't have to put yourself in positions where you kind of get stuck in something. You don't have to answer something that is not in your forte. Okay, because we don't want to pretend that we know something when we don't, right? That's not the space that we want to be in, and it doesn't put us in the right confidence. So what's also really important is the importance of recording the process of your research and your findings as it's happening, right? So think of it this way. And I just saw I think I saw it this morning, like a new dinosaur has been, a new species of dinosaur has been unearthed in, I don't know what country. Okay. Literally, I saw it this morning. And I was like, what's going on now? That's so cool. So they don't know any of the details yet, but they just know small portions of it. That is you. You get to start sharing as things are happening without, this is where I know in your industry, everything has to be like super fact-based. Yes, be fact-based as you're processing, as you're figuring things out, as it's happening. It doesn't have to be when you've already come after 100 hours of research, after 100 years of solitude. You can be doing it as it's happening, and that makes you relatable in your space. You want your information to be digestible and fun. And I know that probably goes against everything you've ever heard with how to show your information, but you and we all know this. If you're in front of the camera with your students, or you're in front of the classroom. I did a lot of training at the Haas School of Business. So I was a professor there for a little while. And I know when the students are following, and I know when they're not. And if I'm like way over their head and I'm bringing in super complex ideas and I'm not translating for them and I'm not making it digestible, I'm not bringing in analogies, I'm not bringing in metaphors or something that's relatable to them, maybe a TikTok trend, maybe something that they can relate to, I've lost them. We've lost them. And we know that these days, our attention span keeps getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. So instead of fighting against that, let's learn how to participate in it. So I'm going to give you an example of like how Instagram is versus TikTok. So I want you to think of TikTok, and this is going to be a little bit weird for you, as like you're FaceTiming your friend. It is very informal. Okay, you still want to be professional, like Dr. Castañeda said, because remember, you are a walking brand, right? So we still want to be professional, but you can be informal and casual. And I know that probably seems like, you're like, wait, how can you have, those are mutually exclusive? Not necessarily. There can be a little overlap. There can be some Venn diagram there. You can be professional and give important information, but still entertain your audience by giving them, give them the punchline up front and then the context afterwards. And that's going to be super confusing because you're used to giving context leading up to the climax, right? Of here's my point. Start with your point first. Start with whatever you think is controversial. Start with your opinion, with whatever it is that is the most important part, and give context afterwards. That's how you get people to continue watching your stuff. This is where you can, some examples of some things that you can do is highlight, literally record yourself highlighting with a yellow highlighter some key topics in your book. And maybe talking over it while it's happening, or say something about it afterwards. And you can use some trending audios that takes some extra special training. Trending topics in the media. Whoa, I think this is, if we don't have trending topics right now, I don't know when you're gonna have them, right? You're in this space right now where every day, every 5 minutes, it seems like there's a trending topic with this administration. So you're gonna have to pick and choose which ones you go after. And you can have a take of like, okay, what do we got today? Right? So make it a little bit more casual and more fun and break things down. Just like Dr. Castañeda said, like it's impossible to keep track of all of Trump's executive orders. And I definitely haven't even attempted to even read one. But you know how I find out about them? On TikTok. I go to experts on TikTok to find out about what's happening and how things are going to affect me and us as a collective, because I don't have time to sit and read an entire executive order, because I don't want to read the legalese that won't make sense to me. So I go to TikTok to have people translate things for me. Okay, so I want you to start thinking about like, and I am an educated woman. Okay, so remember, you're talking to a lot of people who don't have those college degrees, who don't have that education. So they need even more help with the translation. And I'm also just a lazy person, which most humans are, but I'm probably a little bit extra lazy. So I need extra translations. I'm going to pause there, Emir.
No, this is great feedback, and I think as soon as you said TikTok, I could feel some of us go. But Miriam will not let me lie. Miriam Martinez, who's a professor at UCI, and both of us, and who else was at that conference? Dr. Delgado. We were at a conference in Florida, and we met with 2 Congress representatives. And what did they say? It's great that you write policy briefs. That's what one of the training was. But if you can get on TikTok, right? And I'm looking at both of you. If you can get on TikTok, that would be great. And I think Miriam and I were sitting next to each other. We're like, oh, great. But it makes sense. It makes sense that we take on that space again. That makes me nervous, but I'm glad that we have you and others who perhaps are already doing that. So the question that I have next as a follow-up is, what techniques do you have, can you offer to help with that stress that comes up with recording that video or saying yes to that interview? Do you have any stress managing techniques?
Absolutely. So these are the techniques I give to all of my clients who are getting ready to go on stage. So what's funny is the brain doesn't understand the difference between, being chased by a tiger versus going on stage or being on camera. It's like the same. Like brain's like, we're about to die. Saber-tooth after me. Right? So we just need to tell the body and the brain, it's okay. We're okay. We're going to be okay. We're not going to die. So one of my favorite techniques is to do something called box breathing. So what box breathing is a way to engage your parasympathetic nervous system, which says like, we're calm, we're cool, we can listen to the little birdies, everything's nice and happy. And if everyone's wants to practice it, we can actually do it right now. So I'm going to tell you what it is first, and then we're going to do it together. So box breathing is where you do 4 counts of an inhale, then you hold for 4 seconds, then you exhale for 4, and then you hold for 4. Everybody want to try it? Let's try it together. All right, perfect. All right, so we're going to go inhale on count of 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale slowly, 2, 3, 4. Get rid of all that air in your body and hold, 2, 3, 4. Right? So that's the exercise. We just did that once. I usually have my clients do that 2 or 3 times, and you can do that privately in your own private space before you get on camera, before you get on stage, or you can do it behind stage and even when you're already smiling. Okay, so like this is something where you can do at any point in time, and it will help your body and your brain shift into like, oh, okay, no one's chasing me, we're safe. So there are also some acupressure points. So this is one of the things that I became really good at. So if you find, I call, my husband laughs because he's like, I don't know what it's called, but I call it the squishy part. The squishy part here on your hand. So if anybody knows the actual term, let me go. There we go. I'm doing a better job on the camera right there. So this, and by the way, if anybody ever has a headache, tension headache, holding here, like this will be in like really kind of digging in. Don't hurt yourself, right? But dig in here in the top will be life-saving. There's a direct meridian that goes here from to the top of our head that will tell your body like, hey, we're good. Oh, this is awesome. It feels really good. So that there, and then also the back of the neck. If you literally just rub the back of your neck or kind of like gently pull, there you go. We say in Mexico, la nuca, right? And kind of like how you're grabbing little kittens, how mamas grab their baby kittens. Like that's why it feels so yummy. Okay, there's some acupressure points there where when we're doing this, we're in a state of relaxation, right? You would never do this if you're being chased by a rabid dog because your body's like this. So when you're doing this, you're engaging your brain and telling your brain and your body like, hey, we're safe to do this. So it starts resetting your nervous system to like, oh, okay, like nothing bad's going to happen. And then you can be fully present with what you're doing. So there's a couple of, those are a couple of them. And I did want to tell you a little bit about the importance of your body posture, right? So you'll notice here, I have shoulders dropped, but shoulder blades back. Okay. So shoulders drop, shoulder blades back. So it creates what you want to, I want you to imagine that from your sternum, there's like a bright light from your sternum going straight from you to who you're speaking with, right? Whether it's in person, whether it's on stage, whether it's on Zoom, shoulders down, shoulder blades attempting to touch, right? So you're not like hurting yourself like this, but it creates this body posture where you're aligned and it exudes confidence, right? Very often, especially those of us who spend most of our day in front of a computer, we have our shoulders rolled forward and slouched. And it doesn't matter how much of an expert you are in your topic. I'm going to repeat that. It does not matter how much of an expert you are on your topic. If you are talking, you are sitting like this, and you're especially if you're monotone and your shoulders rolled over, nobody's going to believe you. These are psychological things that we have all as human beings. Okay. So shoulders down, shoulder blades back. I'm going to pause there, Emir.
I'm going to have Vanessa Delgado ask the next question. And I just want to apologize. Before this, I think I was leaning forward and asking. So never mind. I'm going to pay attention to my posture.
No apology
Believe everything I
needed.
said. So Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Emmy. This has been so just things that I've not heard before. And I think that it's incredibly important given our time. I think in general for myself, it's already kind of just stressful to do some of this, kind of public facing work. But one of the things that I feel myself personally, but perhaps others, I have felt even greater pressure and just even more anxiety, honestly, about engaging in the work that I feel like is true to myself and that I care about in this political climate. And so, one of the things that I wanted to ask was, how do you manage the stress, just generally that happens, right? Just by engaging in this work, coupled with all the mess that's happening. And I say that specifically as somebody who studies, issues affect undocumented immigrants, undocumented and mixed status families. I live in an area that's predominantly, white, conservative, very small town, rural. And so it does make me feel a little bit, like if I speak out, things like that, I could be the target because my family is one of very few that are people of color. And so I just wanted to kind of see, how do we engage in that work and deal with that stress that I feel is kind of harder to manage with everything going on?
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful question. And Vanessa, so I think I'm going to give you twofold, right? So what you just asked me, I would spend an hour on with the client. Okay, because this is showing you and walking you through a lot of these techniques, and we would do some rewiring. But because we don't have that time today, I'm gonna give you just a quick answer on that. So the number one is daily self-care practices, right? So self-care can be very different for everyone. For me, a bubble bath is not, it doesn't do it for me. I'm gonna tell you what. The water doesn't stay hot enough, and like 5 minutes in, I'm like, this is too much work. Like it was like 20 minutes to fill the tub, and now it was just 3 minutes. Like, forget this. Okay, so like find your self-care practices. For me, for a lot of my clients, is do you have a therapist? Do you have a coach? Do you have and this is going to be actually my second leg to this, is find your tribe, right? So there's two sets to this. Your self-care practices are there breathing, right? Learning some of these breathing techniques to engage the parasympathetic nervous system. Also, for those of us who grew up with a lot of trauma, okay, I'm a first generation born and raised in the US. I had a lot of trauma with the pull of what I was supposed to do as the eldest of 7, right? I actually ran away from home at 17 because my parents refused to let me go to college. So I ran away to college. I know that sounds idiotic, but this happens in our communities, right? So, and I was banished from my family. My mom wouldn't talk to me for like 3 to 6 months. And there's a lot of like tension and trauma that comes with all of that, not including all the other thing that happens with being, a lot of other things that happen in our society, right? So I had to learn something called somatic healing, right? So it's how do you engage your body in gentle movements, right? We are so often like we gotta get stuff done, right? We're like, especially with the chaos, there's this perception of what the administration is doing is chaos and overwhelm. And guess what? If they only win when we actually go into overwhelm. So I'm going to tell you one of my favorite mantras right now is joy as an act of resistance. Joy is an act of resistance. I invite you to join me. That is my resistance right now, where I am creating that, and nobody's going to take my joy away. I create joy and I exude it to the world because I know that I'm not letting any administration and any troll on the internet take away what I know to be true in my heart, right? And the second one, we started this one already, but find your tribe. It seems like, the internet trolls, like they literally have nothing better to do. So it does seem like we get attacked. And trust me, as someone who does not have thick skin, who ran away after one of my TikToks went viral, I was like, I don't know what to do. People are mean. But the thing is, our brain is really is trained to go into, by default, it's what's wrong, what could kill us. And the thing is, that's not true. Half of the comments on one of my videos that went viral were from psychologists and therapists saying, completely agree, this is 100% accurate. And all the other internet trolls, in somebody's basement, like, why do I care about their opinion? So we have to get so caught up. I care so much more about my people and my tribe and them getting the message, because literally right now, their lives depend on it. So I had to learn to stop being selfish. Oh, I'm going to say that out loud. Okay. If we don't share our messages right now, literally people's lives are on the line. And it is selfish for us to not share. I don't care about the trolls. I don't care about who wants to target, because I'm going to tell you, there are way more people who are doing the work to want to support you and put you on platforms to share to the masses.
Vanessa, I just want to applaud you for asking that question because I think it's in everybody's minds. And Emmy, thank you so much for addressing it in that way. And in a way, like, we have to be brave for one another, right? And I completely agree with your messages about finding your tribe. And I think as professors, like, students are also looking at how we respond. And if we respond in fear, I have seen that with my students, that they take on that fear, right? So I mean, not to add more responsibilities because that wouldn't be fair either, right? But when I'm in front of the classroom or when I guest lecture, I try to be extra brave for them as well. With that, and maybe Dr. Castañeda can also join us and others here, that we have to be mindful of vulnerable categories, right? If you're a legal permanent resident, if you have, specific protection status, do be careful. Like, you do have to be careful because we have seen how our colleagues have been under attack, deported, etc. So if you cannot be brave because of where you are in this social location, you don't have to be. Like, tap into others. It's like when I was going through as an assistant professor, there were things in meetings that I couldn't say, but I would tap into my network for them to speak on my behalf. And now that I'm tenured, I get to speak on their behalf, and that's how we just support each other by finding your tribe. So I do have more questions, but I want to be mindful of the time. So um, I'm gonna skip to the last question, and then I'm gonna open it up for Q&A because I want to give others an opportunity. You've mentioned AI a couple times, and as academics, it's something that we are being exposed to fairly recent. And I wonder how can we leverage it, right? To, like you said, translate the work that we have already done to help us in these endeavors of public facing, public sociology, activist work. Can you give us maybe, of course, we don't have time in the next 3 minutes for you to go in detail, but if you can maybe just mention a few, we'll take notes and we can research later. And also, I would like you, and I asked Emmy to do this, if you can post your interest form, if others are interested in possibly working with Emmy. I bounce some ideas. I'm like, when she's working one-on-one with me, I'm like, can we do this as a group? Can we work as a group? And that way it's not too expensive for us and we all benefit and we bounce ideas and we kind of have assignments. And she was like, just let me know what you need and we'll make it work. So she does have an information sheet that if you're ready, you can post it here. But if you can just share with us, any AI tools that we can use, not to do the work for us. Again, as academics, we value integrity and honesty, but how can we leverage it to amplify our work?
Absolutely. And again, this is going to be a real quick rundown on this. So I have 3 tools that I want to tell you about. ChatGPT, most of you are probably already familiar with, but there's another one called Claude.ai, which I'm going to put all the links in here once we start doing the Q&A. And another one called Opus Pro. So Claude AI is what I call a more human approach to writing. So if you're worried about like ChatGPT being like super clunky and you're like, it doesn't get me, ChatGPT and Claude, I highly, highly recommend for you. Let's say you have in an article or something that you've written that's part of a dissertation, something that's super technical, that might not seem technical to you, but it is to us. You can put that into Claude or ChatGPT and say, please synthesize this, summarize this in 3 sentences, but make it so a 5-year-old can understand it and give it different topics. So like, okay, a 5-year-old can understand it, a teenager can understand it, or whatever category that you want that's going to be your audience. Or say I'm crafting a message for social media. One of the things I'm going to tell right now is like summarize my book / research in 3 sentences, start with a hook. Okay, what does that mean? Start with hook means start with the punchline, right? What's the most important part? What's the headline, right? And news outlets do this very well. There's a reason why there's a headline and then subtext and then everything else. And they're like, the headline is larger for a reason. It's not the context. I know. We want to give the context. You're like, but it needs context. Please know that 99% of people are only going to read the headline. But if your headline's not good, they're not going to read the rest of it. I know. Okay. This is for all of us on social media. All right. So those 2 tools, they can help you craft pitches for social media outlets, to get yourself on podcasts. They can help you craft outlines for like a TEDx talk or a lot of different things. So I want you to think of social media as this. It's not doing the work for you. However, I want you to think of it as you never have to start anything from scratch ever again. Okay. It can give you, and have you ever had writer's block? Just me. You have some writer's block, or you're just like, I have all these things all over the place that I don't know how to bring them all together. This is where AI can really help you. And you're like, oh, that is it. Connects the dots for you. Okay. There's another tool called Opus Pro. And I highly recommend this. Opus Pro, and again, I'm going to put the links in here. Opus Pro has been life-changing for me. So what's great about Opus Pro is it's an AI tool. It isn't free. You can do 1 video for free, but it's very accessible. It's $8 a month. And what it does is it takes long form video that you've been speaking on. And I think you might like this, Dr. Castañeda. You're probably already using it. But this is where you take long form video, whether it's YouTube or you upload it and you give it the link, and it uses AI to see what you said where, and it does the captions automatically for you. So it'll automatically make a video, whether it's 30 seconds or 3 minutes or whatever you tell it to, and make a whole bunch of short clips for you, and you can upload them directly from there to your socials, or including LinkedIn, or download them and use them anywhere else. It has been, I'm going to give you some numbers term, but last year I saved $20,000 on video editors because I didn't have to hire them anymore. Because video editors were very, very expensive, because they caught them like, oh, people need to make these short clips, but this tool does it all for $8 a month. So it has completely changed the game. And for a lot of the things and the long lectures that you give, you can't post them on Instagram, but you can post 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and this tool would do it for you. Okay. It's a lot of work to do it on your own, but not when you have an automation tool. So there's also chat bots. So your custom personal GPTs. I helped Emir. We're still working on it, but we're creating one on promoting, an expert on promoting her next book. And you can also create grant proposal bots. I created one for myself that's an expert in responding to RFPs. So any companies, any organizations that put out a request for proposal for something that they want people to send bids on, this bot does it. It has all of my information already. I just tell it what the organization wants and needs, and it spits out the proposal in 15 minutes, and it's submitted. I won a 15K bid yesterday from something that I submitted, and it took 15 minutes, and for a national organization. Okay, so you can create that. Again, you have to have the plus version, but it's a grand total of $20, or you have it for free with certain organizations. But you can create a specific chatbot that's just for submitting grants, because guess what? You're saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. They might have different questions, but your information is the same, and it's a lot of work. But what if you could submit 10 grants in a week instead of 10 in a year? So I'm going to pause there. Let me grab those tools in here for you.
Thank you. Yes, please post them, and I will open it now for Q&A. Thank you so much, Emmy, Dr. Castañeda. And so please unmute and ask your questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? If not, do we have any questions? I do have a like something that came up, and it might be a sociologist, please. When I talk to my daughter and complain about something, she always says, "I sociology, I sociology." But oh, Erin, ask your questions. It'll be better than mine. Go ahead.
No, it's going to be a super silly question. So my students, like probably all of your students, are obsessed with TikTok, and I, being an old fart, can't make heads or tails of it. So, and now your talk, Emmy, makes me think that I have to figure out TikTok, which I might have to do. But the question I have is, in terms of the ecosystem of TikTok, since you're obviously familiar with it, what does it look like in terms of getting stuff out there? Because the way my students talk about it, they honestly don't even mention what anybody is an expert in or what they think they're an expert in. It is 100%, well, this went viral, so therefore that is its cachet and value. And so I'm kind of worried that even if I learn how to do this, unless I'm super fancy at it, it's just going to be lost in the algorithm.
The main thing is, are you having fun with it? If you can get to a space where you have fun with it, that energy is transferred. If you are lecturing, just like Dr. Castañeda said, that the journalists do not want you lecturing them, TikTok doesn't want to lecture. So this is a completely different hat, right? You lecture in the classroom, you exude fun on TikTok. So there are a lot of things that you might think are like, Emmy, but there's nothing fun about what we're describing and everything that's happening right now with the situations. Like, how can you create some comedy out of the circus, right? Still in integrity. So again, we don't have time to create a whole, right? This in and of itself, it's its own training. But what I am going to do is, and I'm happy to answer more if we do a full cohort, because it'd be so much fun to do a full cohort with you all, and we can actually like workshop on a weekly basis. But what I'm going to do is actually, I did some research, and I'm going to put a list of examples of professors who are using social media well. And no, it is not about going viral. It's just, you can tell that the professors who are doing this are having fun with it. And when they have fun, the students have fun, and then they share. They want to know, like, do you like what you're doing? Because let's face it, just even in normal corporate world, most people don't like their jobs, and it shows.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. And I think Dr. Castañeda also gave us some great nuggets earlier, like, we don't use this social media or the outlets to talk bad about a specific person. So there is a specific etiquette that we have to remind ourselves as we are doing this. But I'm right there with you. So Vanessa, what is your question?
Thank you so much for the information. I think one of the things that I wanted to just open up to Emmy, Ernesto, and also you, Emir, is as somebody who's kind of working on their book project for the first, my first book project as an assistant professor, I'm on the tenure track. How early would you recommend to start promoting that work? And I say that because like I sent Emir a draft of my stuff like a while back, but I'm still feeling shaky about it. I'm not sure. I still feel like I'm in that space where I need validation to be like, hey, does this make sense? So how soon, especially if you're kind of an early career scholar, how soon should you start? Is it once the book's done? Is it once it's under contract? Is it once I feel better? When does that happen?
Say more, Dr. Castañeda. ¿Ya se cansó?
Okay, thank you. Start. I mean, you again show your passion for the project, for your work. So if it's tell the public already, okay, I interview young female students in the district, blah blah blah. Telling the stories one at a time, photos of the patio. I don't know how you work on, sorry, but start sharing on social media with journalists. Again, the journalists will talk to you and talk about your topic, even if the book is not out, even if you don't have a contract. Again, they don't care about that. Having the book, having the contract is going to give you more credibility, more expertise, you're more reliable. But you can talk. You don't have to have that to start at a podcast or start getting out. Have your TikTok videos. Start as soon as possible because it takes a while to get a following. It takes a while to get it right. So when the book is out already in the world, it's already too late to get started because it's gonna take you a while to get booked. So I mean, start using the title, like people here where we're showing the links and the titles and all that. That's good to get on because because a couple of years after the book is out, it's gonna be harder to do that. So give teasers like a lot of people put on social media the cover once it's ready, or you're saying, hey, I'm going over the proof so that people can walk through the process with you because it's a long process. And again, it's very easy to get tired of your own project and then to get, I don't want to touch that. I'm done with that book. But try to do it when you still have the energy. Try to create as much material as you can.
Thank you. That's great advice. And it's work. It is work. And that's why I was blown away when Emmy was like, oh, let me create a chat. ¿Cómo se llama, Emmy? A chat, what was it? The bot.
Either chat bot or custom GPT.
Yeah, and we just started feeding it the website, my profile, and asked it to serve as an expert. And I know colleagues that are, on promoting their book right now, and they've spent thousands of dollars in the 6 months before and after, and we're talking like 20,000, 15,000. So many of us can afford that, right? And so these are great tools that, and also relying on each other. And I hope that we continue to use this community to like, hey, Dr. Castañeda, here's my new book. Do you mind sharing it? And then we can promote it for each other, right? Like, I always love the guest lecture. I like to bring guest lectures, and guess what? This is how we use our books and promote our work. So this is also very powerful, the fact that we are here. Any other questions from others here?
And as just as an example, besides Emir, when she introduced me and talked about my books, I haven't talked about my books at all. I haven't mentioned, I haven't read the titles, but here they are, right? So you maybe cut them. So again, I may be talking about infrastructure or whatever, but you can still have your book there. So do that, or the equivalent early on.
Yeah. This is great item placement, right? Product placement. And when I saw your books, I was like, I'm going to take mine out, pero ni sé dónde está ahorita.
Had to have a handy on it.
Yeah.
It's a nice cover.
I had a follow-up question. Sorry.
Yes.
So, because I'm clearly not initiated into any of this, I need to create a website for myself, and you just mentioned like the whole chatbot thing. I don't know. Are there tips and tricks so I don't have to spend a bunch of money to hire someone to? I know Squarespace is there, but honestly, is that like where we're at right now? Like I can like look into it, but I don't know if you had any other hacks.
Absolutely. I actually just taught one. So I teach a website. So I highly recommend Wix.com. It is plug and play. It's just like playing with PowerPoint. Their templates on there are amazing. Please don't hire anyone and pay thousands of dollars. This should cost you your domain name and the rental of the Wix, which is like $12 a month or something like that. Have fun with it. There's a lot of training on YouTube on Wix. If it's something that you all want as part of the training, we can include that as well as we move forward. But yeah, Wix.com. You can play with it until you're ready. You can buy your domain directly in there, and then you can get your email directly through it. So like it's an all-in-one encompassing program. I have a lot of my websites through there, and I walk clients through that. So you can, if you wanted to have a website up and running in less than an hour, that's what you can set up.
Cool.
Yeah, I will say everybody do that. I just GoDaddy. It's a little more clunky. Probably Wix is better. But even with GoDaddy, it has templates and things that you do. It's very easy to do. I love it because the university gives you a formal website, but it's very hard to edit. It has to be very formal. You may switch jobs. There's liability. So having a personal domain gives you control over what to say and how to say it. And that you just have to pay them. Yeah, the monthly fee is a couple $100, but it's well invested. If you itemize your taxes, you can put that as a business expense. Or you used to. You still can. So yeah, it's completely worth it. And if you get really stuck and you hate it, probably a college student, one of your children may have a lot of fun playing with it. And I can suggest a few things for a few bucks, and then you help them and they help you. So yeah, I recommend that you guys start your website, and you just have like one page could be enough. Can be that people roll, or a couple pages. So it's worth it, and then you can start a blog there and put your ideas out there to create your own. It's very hard to pitch and to have people share your knowledge, but then you create your own places where you share. And when you're sharing on the peer review process that takes forever, it's gatekept. There's a paywall, right? So then do versions of that that you can put in your web or online or in blogs or in podcasts. When you explain, I suppose this article, these are the 5 takeaways. I recommend you all to do it. It's very useful so that people are aware of your work, because most people don't have the time to read it.
Yes, these are great ideas, and also have fun with your website. It's actually pretty cool to be like, oh, I can highlight this, and I love Dr. Castañeda's example of if it doesn't make it to the immediate outlet, you have your own landing page, right, where you can post your blogs, and that's something that I underutilize in my website. So thank you for that idea, and I'll be utilizing it a bit more. And then it's also a great landing space for something else that you may do. For example, I love art, and this is also a space where I get to show other aspects of my life that intersect with my academic life, but it's another part of who I am that gets to be showcased in these spaces. We'll have one last final question, and then we'll dismiss everyone. Any other questions? No? I think we're ready then. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Castañeda. Emmy, thank you so much for gifting us your time. This was a true gift, and we will pay it forward. I think that's one of my mottos as well. Like, if we can pay you now, we'll pay it forward later. Regresamos el favor. If you ever need any of us for anything, please keep us in mind. Emmy, I hope that some of us are excited to work with you. And I'm definitely will see you next week for our cafecito and writing date. But I look forward to perhaps getting to know others here on a more personal basis, being a support system for you as well. And thank you so much for spending your Friday with us. Les mando un abrazo and muchas gracias.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emir, for organizing. Take care, everyone.
Oh, gracias,
Thank you so
gracias.
much, everybody. Take
Thank you,
care.
thank you.
Bye.